What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Inside Scoop with Captain Mike Genoun, your legit Florida Keys weekly fishing forecast. But so much more, right? We really hit on a lot of different topics and subjects that keep us connected out there. You know, it's these small details that independently may not make a big difference, but when you combine them, it's really going to have a dramatic impact on your fishing. So pay attention to the details. Look, a lot going on Friday, September 12th. Beautiful week behind us. Had some really, really gorgeous weather. A lot of flat, calm days, and there's a lot of flat, calm days on the horizon as well. Certainly, if you're planning on visiting or fishing down here in the Keys over the weekend, you could expect it to be very calm. But you could also expect a lot of rain. Okay, so keep an eye out for those showers. Same story as every week. It does look like, though, we're going to have quite a bit of rain this weekend. So, you know, kind of hit or miss depending on where you are, depending on where that chain of storms develops and what way it moves. You can be in Isle Morada and beautiful blue skies. You could be in Marathon and torrential downpours like last night. Crazy, crazy amount of rain. But short of that, not a lot of wind. 5 knots, 5 to 10 offshore, east. As early next week progresses, it's going to turn a little bit more to the northeast and pick up a little bit, 10 to 15. But who knows? That's still a number of days away, and that may diminish as well. Look, a lot to talk about, okay? A lot to talk about, and I want to really jam a lot of info into you on this week's show here, okay? And I want to remind you to catch up on all of the previous segments as well and episodes of the Inside Scoop, because again, regardless of the fishing information, you're gonna pick up stuff that's gonna help you out on the water, and that's what really all of this is all about, right? That's why we're doing it. So that's a legit scoop. First of all, the reef bite, it's good. There's yellowtails on the reef. You put in the time, you're going to catch some fish. The guys that are fishing a little bit deeper, there's still big muttons around. You know, there's a select amount of guys that are really dialed in on this mutton snapper fishery, man. They're really zoned in on it. And when when you've got your finger on the pulse like that, you're going to be successful. When you put in a lot of time and you find those patterns, you find those rhythms, so to speak, of when they're biting, where they're biting. That's kind of how mutton snapper fishing is. Certainly you can stop any day at any spot and catch a mutton. Blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then too. So absolutely that's a possibility, but to be consistent, you've got to put in that time, okay? You really do. But it's worth it because the rewards are amazing. The big 15 to 18 pound, 30, 32 inch mutton snapper, that's a trophy fish. That's an absolutely beautiful fish, hard fighting fish, hard to find, hard to fool, and really just an all around awesome catch. So don't discount those muttons. There's some other stuff out on the wrecks as well. You never know when you drop a bait or a jig, what's going to eat it. It could be a margate. It could be a cobia. It could be a big rainbow runner, a yellow jack. Okay, speaking of yellow jacks, we haven't touched on yellow jacks a lot. We find these bigger yellow jacks around wrecks, and also they will invade the reef, okay? So that's a big area from that 30-foot patch reef kind of area. They'll come in there, marauding around, picking off whatever they can, and then they'll work their way out to the wrecks out in 150 to 250. So it's a big range for those yellow jacks, and don't mistake the yellow jack with an amberjack or an almaco jack. Okay, they're much more golden, more of a pelagic predator kind of. Will readily hit bait, readily hit jigs, but a great fish on the dinner table. Never have those worms or parasites that you see in the amberjacks, sometimes in the almacos as well. I never see them in yellow jacks. It's a great fish for sashimi and sushi. A lot of restaurants use it for that purpose, and a lot of anglers, that's how they enjoy it as well. Delicate when you slice it real thin, really a great fish. Don't forget to bleed it and ice it when you get those yellow jacks in the boat. That's just going to keep that meat in prime condition, especially if you're going to eat it rare, or I should say raw, not rare. But of course you could sear it as well, right? There's another option. But a great fish, like I said, we don't touch on that a lot. And it's rewarding to catch one of those also. So keep your eyes out for the yellow jacks. You'll see a lot more of those as the water temperature begins and continues to drop here in the upcoming seasons. I think we're over the hurdle, obviously. It's already mid-September. So I think it's all, I don't know if I should say uphill or downhill from here. For me, I like to say uphill. I really enjoy that wintertime fishing down here in the Keys because of the variety. I feel the bite is excellent, but even right now, the bite's great. And you know what's cool right now is kids are back to school, things are slow. So there's a lot of room out on the water. There's, you know, a lot of room in town, so to speak. It's a great time to visit and fish the Keys. It really is. Further offshore, the guys that are running out to the humps with the live bait, look, you throw live pilchards behind a boat, blackfin tunas are going to blow up on the bait. That's how it works. All right, get just up ahead of the humps, the Marathon hump, the Isle Morada hump. There's some other popular humps out there as well. You know, put yourself into rotation. You can literally hold the boat in position just on the upcurrent side of the wreck or drift with it. Throw those live baits. Just keep an eye on them. Soon you're going to see tunas busting on them. Most of them are going to be in that 5 to 15 pound range. You get one over 15. You know, it's a nice blackfin for this area, but certainly fish in the 20s are regularly caught. Sharks, absolutely horrendous right now. Some days better than other days, but the sharks are fierce, okay? If you get 3 or 4 or 5 sharks circling under the boat, how are you going to get a tuna past one of those? Pick up and move, okay? Pick up and move. Take the action with you. You've got the bait. So you may have to make a bunch of moves, right? And pick one off here, pick one off there. That's the name of the game when it comes to blackfin tuna fishing out on the humps when the tax man is around, okay? Him and all of his buddies, so to speak. But that's a great option. And there's still dolphin offshore too. Certainly the pressure on the dolphin has reduced dramatically. The number of fish in the area has also been, has also reduced, but there's still plenty of them out there to target. Certainly you're going to find dolphin mixed in offshore on the live bait. That's really that key right now, man. If you can load those bait wells with those small to medium pilchards, you're really going to put yourself in a good position for success. And don't try and pen those baits. Those baits are going to die in a bait pen overnight or a couple of days, especially because you're catching them in a cast net. They're not individually caught on sabiki rigs where that bait can remain in better condition. On the cast nets, when you throw a net on a school of bait, they all rub up against each other. All of that scales and slime coat comes off, and those small to medium pilchards, they die. You'll pull your bait pen out of the water, and the entire bottom is covered in dead bait fish. And that, of course, doesn't do you any good. So it's always a good idea to try and net those baits on your way out in the morning, okay? If you can get the bigger baits, great, but those smaller chummers, if you can spend some time in the morning finding those, throwing a cast net on them in some shallow water at the mouth of passes and inlets, do your homework, put in the time, find those bait spots, okay? And every minute that you spend doing that is going to pay off for you when you get offshore, I promise you that. Okay, it's going to make a big difference. Could you catch the fish offshore trolling? Absolutely. Jigging, absolutely. But nobody wants to lose jigs, $20 jigs to sharks, one after the other. That ever happened to you? You know what I mean? So it doesn't make sense to really do that. While you're out there, for a change of pace, drop a bait down to the bottom. There's a lot of queens around. The queen snapper fishing is really good right now. Again, it's not every day where it's gangbusters and you're going to drop baits to the bottom and load full stringers with big queens. That's not how queen snapper fishing is, buddy. You got to work for these fish, but they're there, right? So it's worth putting in that time and that effort when the fish are there and, it's a target-rich environment. And you know that your odds of encountering these snappers, and being successful are excellent. So now's the time to do that. Fresh baits, like a whole squid, something like this, perfect, okay? But don't discount fresh bonita strip, fresh blackfin tuna strip, a dolphin belly, it's a snapper, okay? Give it a nice, sleek, fresh piece of meat, and I'll tell you what, you may be surprised that may outfish the squid. But both are an excellent option. Obviously, you're fishing on or near the bottom. However, those snappers will roam a little ways up off the bottom, so don't forget about that. It's not like a tile fish or, say a snowy grouper that are really hugging that bottom really, really tight. A snapper is going to kind of wander a little bit higher off the bottom looking for food, very much like a barrel fish. And that's a great option as well right now out in the deep, because the deep dropping closer to shore is closed. Regarding the tile fish and the snowy groupers, it's off limits. So right now, if you want a deep drop on the ocean side, it's in that deep water for those species, or it's nothing. Sword fishing remains strong, okay? Be careful with those storms. You're 30 miles offshore. Just keep an eye on those, dodge those. But while you're out there and you're fishing a couple of baits, expect to get bit. Okay, it's been an excellent swordfish season and continues to do so. Big news, I think, is the Wahoo. There's been quite a few Wahoo caught, which is really cool, right? And I want to talk a little bit more about that as well, because here it is, it's Wahoo season. We're in the middle of September. Okay, before you know it, a couple of cold fronts and this bites on. And even right now, July, August, September, those full moon periods produce fish. Okay, produce fish. If you're going to Wahoo fish throughout the summer and early fall, the full moon periods are going to lean the odds in your favor. Not to say you can't go out there on any given day of the week and catch a fish. Of course you can. But the full moon periods are going to lean your odds, way up there. Until that water temperature drops even further. And then as it continues to get cooler, that full moon is going to have a little bit less of a benefit. That's kind of the way I want to present it. Meaning right now, if I'm going to go out and Wahoo fish in August and September, I'm going to spend my time around that full moon. December, January, February, I don't care about the moon. I don't care. There's fish here. The water's cold. They're up and down the line. They're moving. It's on. Middle of its peak season. I don't care. So that's kind of how I weigh it out. Of course, I like to Wahoo fish in a variety of different ways, but I don't know if anything really gets me as excited as trolling. It's such a cool tactic, I'm trying to fool this brilliant predator, trying to find them and fool them. And here off the Middle Keys, look, we don't have that class of fish on a regular basis that you'll see further up northeast Florida, up in the Gulf. You'll see a lot of fish in that 60 to 100 pound class, right? That's a 4 or 5 year old fish. We don't see those fish here. Are there some of those wandering through our waters every now and then? Absolutely, no question. And if you fish the live bait, you're going to have a far greater chance of fooling a bigger fish. The live bonitas, that's the way to go. However, when it comes to sheer numbers and covering ground, I found that nothing beats trolling, right? I can put a lot of miles under my hull and, really cover a lot of ground looking for not only fish, but hungry fish, because once they eat, I'm telling you, they're done. Very, very rarely do we pop open Wahoo and they have something in their belly. Yes, of course, on occasion they do, but for the most part, they don't. They have an empty belly. That tells me that once they eat, for the most part, they're done eating for a while, maybe letting that food digest. It's not like a dolphin that just never stops eating, even though they get kind of line shy every now and then as well. So when it comes to that trolling, we're pretty much fishing anywhere from 100 to 300 feet, sometimes shallower. One of the biggest Wahoo I ever caught was in 55 feet. Was not targeting that fish there, just happened to come inshore, went a little bit too far inshore before I was turning offshore, and boom, actually hit a high-speed lure. It was zigzagging up off a pompano, and in 55 feet, caught a really, really nice fish. So, they're in there, but for the most part, we're focusing in that 100 to 300 foot range. That's our zone up and down the line. We're looking for structure, wrecks, reefs, color changes, anything like that. But the presence of bait, that's a really, really good indication that there's Wahoo around, especially the big flying fish. There's definitely a direct correlation between Wahoo and big flying fish. That is the number one bait that I like to see. When I'm out there looking for Wahoo, if I see big flying fish skittering all around, man, I'm in a good mood, because it's just a matter of time before something gets smacked. On the other hand, if you go out there and it's the Dead Sea, and you're not reading any bait on your fish finder, you're not seeing anything on the surface, no flying fish scattering anywhere, no little bonitas popping anywhere, there's no food. And if there's no food, there's no reason for Wahoo to stay in that area, to feed in that area, to roam around those waters. They might be moving through, but they're gonna keep on moving through. On the other hand, bait-rich waters obviously set the stage for a great bite. Either way, trolling, great tactic, great way to cover a lot of ground. I've had so many questions on when do I troll a big lip plug versus something that traditionally looks more like that original Yo-Zuri Bonita, right? That's a Nomad Mad Mac, but it has that same profile as the legendary Yo-Zuri Bonita. I can't tell you how many Wahoo have been caught on that lure and continue to be caught on that lure. It's a great bait. But this has some, I don't want to call it improvements, it's just different, but same sort of profile, obviously, no lip. And you can see I have this rigged differently. So let's first talk about the deep diving plug with the big lip. This happens to be a Nomad DTX 220. You can see, I mean, look at that thing. That thing has been hit so many times. And the more it gets hit, I'm telling you, the more that that lure gets bit, the better it works. Okay, the better it works. I don't like new lures out of the box. I don't like them. Okay, not until they start catching fish. Once they start getting those war wounds on there, I don't know if it's the added vibration or just the fact that it just looks a little bit different. It looks a little bit more authentic rather than perfectly shiny right out of a box, almost like too good. Whatever it is, like I said, the more it gets bit, the more those ones that really get hit are awesome. The leader in this particular case, it's Momoy extra hard leader material. It's about 4 feet of 220-pound mono, okay? Extra stiff leader material. There it is, right there. Starts up there and ends right there. So there's kind of your leader. Hopefully that translates really well. Crimped on top, okay, to a 200-pound ball bearing swivel. Crimped right to the lip of the lure. There's a ring right on the lip of the lure, and that's my leader right there. Now that connection point is up in the front of that bait. Okay, so this way, Wahoo typically will hit a lure from the back or the side to cut off its propulsion right there. So rarely do we get cut off. Does it happen? 1 out of every 50 bites. But keep in mind, after every fish, we're feeling that leader. Oftentimes it is frayed or braided, and we'll immediately swap that out, okay, and fish a different lure or re-rig it, whichever whatever you want to do. But don't make that mistake. Short of that, with the 220, it's a great fit. We get a great presentation. And now's the time to get all of this dialed in, right? Because again, we're talking about it because peak Wahoo season is right around the corner. So don't wait until December to then get your gear all in, shape. You're not going to be able to, there's times you can't find a particular lure during peak Wahoo season because word is out that that bait's super hot, and next thing you know, you can't get your hands on any of them. I'm telling you, it happens. You guys know that. Hooks, I swapped the hooks. Don't make the mistake of fishing that lure with the stock hooks. Look, I don't know. I'm just telling you my personal experience. I can't speak for anybody else. I'm not going to try and speak for anybody else. My personal experience has proven, without a shadow of a doubt, that I am hooking and landing a far greater percentage of fish by swapping the hooks from the standard hooks. I'm not saying they're bad hooks. I'm not saying anything about those hooks. I'm just simply giving you the math that I catch a lot more fish with a 9.0 Southern style tuna hook, stainless steel, than in that particular shape and size than with that BKK hook that these lures come with. But again, I want to remind you, in order to get the correct orientation on the hooks, we have to add a split ring. So have a bag of 200 to 300 pound split rings handy, because you're going to go through them. They also wear out, so pay close attention, and when it needs to be replaced, don't hesitate. That's how we rig that bait. We're only pulling the deep diving plugs. We do not mix these two baits together. This bait, the Mad Mac or your Zuri Bonita, right? They're similar, is rigged a little bit different, and I've modified it a little bit different. First of all, the leader material on these Mad Macs is not the monofilament. It's not that 220 mono. Okay, here I'm fishing wire or multi-strand cable, but in this particular case, single strand wire. And by the way, most effective, we catch fish at 8 to 14 knots on these. But if I had to pick a number, 10 knots, 10 miles an hour. That's the sweet spot for me. Whereas the Mad Mac, this is rigged with about the same length, 3 to 4 feet of leader. I don't need any more than that. Again, here's the top. It's a 200-pound ball bearing swivel. Okay, not a snap, just a ball bearing swivel with the haywire twist right there. And just 3 feet, 4 feet of single strand and connected to the ring right at the top of the lure. However, look where that connection point is. It's right there in the middle of the bait. It's not up here. It's not way up here like on the deep diving plug. So when a fish hits that lure, you risk getting cut off, and you will get cut off a lot more if you're fishing that mono on that type of bait that has the connection point in the center of the body where they typically strike. So that's why we fish the wire. We found that that bait is the most effective at least 14 miles an hour. So it's just not being presented properly. If I'm trying to pull the plugs, it's not swimming fast enough. On the other hand, if I pull that fast enough, that's popping out of the water. That's not designed to be pulled at 14 plus. It can be on a nice calm day when everything is right. I've pulled them 18, okay? But that's the rarity. I'm telling you that right now. That bait's gonna start popping at, well, it's all gonna depend on the conditions. It's also gonna depend on how far behind the boat you have it. We fish them on 65 or 80 pound braid, a lot of different factors. But once again, the point I'm trying to make is simple. That's a 10 mile an hour bait. That's a 15 mile an hour bait. I can't mix the two and expect to get excellent results, so I don't. When do I fish each? When fish are concentrated in an area, I'm gonna fish slower, more methodically with the deep diving plugs. If I'm covering ground, looking for fish, and I want to put more miles under my belt, I can increase my speed by 50%, cover 50% more miles in the same amount of time. That may not be significant to you, but to me it's huge. If I spent, I'm just going to use a round number with simple math. The last 2 hours of the day trolling, if I switch from a 10 mile an hour spread to a 15 mile an hour spread, I'm covering 10 more miles of fishy water. 10 more miles. That's a big distance and a great opportunity to hook up. Okay. I rig these also. I modify my hook selection on here as well. That same Southern style 9/0 tuna hook with the extra split ring as the tail hook. The belly hook, on the other hand, is a different hook altogether. You'll see that that's a very short shank hook. It's actually a jig hook. It's a very short shank, big jig hook. Okay, reason being is oftentimes I have found that if I put that longer shank Southern style tuna hook as a belly hook, it often wraps around the top of the lure and gets fouled across the top of the lure as you're pulling it. And when you're pulling that through the water at a high rate of speed and that hook is fouled right on top of the back of that lure, you're out of luck. That lure is going to fly all over out of the water, and it's going to affect you in a negative way, and you're not going to catch squat. You're going to have to reel it up and reset it, and nobody wants to do that, and blah, blah, blah. So to avoid that, short shank hook right there. Still a big hook, a lot of bite. It gets them, but it can't get fouled on the top of the lure, okay? I fish 6 of these when we're pulling them at a high rate of speed versus 4 of these, all right? I just want to mention with that type of bait, put it way back there, way back there. Make sure you have a couple way back there, all right? When I say way back there, I don't mean 300 feet. I mean like 200 yards, like way back there, okay? At least have one of them way back there. You'll be surprised how many times that one gets bit. Look, a lot of other stuff going on. Same as always, plenty of opportunities on the reefs and on the wrecks all up and down the line. When you're offshore right now is a time also to really spend, your energy looking for floaters. Those floaters are going to hold dolphin, but they may have triple tail. They may have rainbow runners on them. Another great fish, rarely talked about. Also great for sashimi and to be, presented that way. Also bleed it and ice very well because, again, you're going to be eating that raw. But what a beautiful fish, a lot of fun to catch. And rainbow runners will associate with that floating debris out there. A small live bait, irresistible to them. Okay, but they'll hit some jigs and even a hook with a piece of squid. But they just can't resist a small live bait. Look outside the box. You know what I'm saying? Be prepared for what's coming ahead of us. But when you're out there, look outside the box as well. Those are the little things that are really going to make a very, very big difference. It's preparedness, really being ready, having spares, and, understanding that the things you think are going to happen or don't think are going to happen still happen. So that's a big one. Couple other things I want to touch on, guys. If you've been following, of course, our Instagram, I've been boatless for about a week or so, going on 2 weeks. We are installing a Seakeeper ride system aboard our 41 Sea Hunter. We're super excited about this, working closely with the entire team. The boat is amazing. This 41 CTS powered by the Quad Mercury 400 V10s. Look, this thing is a monster. And I don't know if there's anything else out there that compares to this. I'm going to say no. Okay, no. And now, to be able to enhance it even further and to take the performance and the handling characteristics even further by adding an intuitive system that can think far faster and react far faster than you and I can. We're talking about 100 moves a second. Okay, we're talking about controllers on either side of the hull that are moving, okay, at up to 100 times a second. These configured, I'm going to call them automatic trim tabs, but that's not really what I want to call it. Like I said, a controller, we'll just call it that. And of course, I'm going to show it to you in greater detail. But that finds that 0 point of the boat, okay, on leaning, yawing, rolling, rocking, and really just zeroes you out. So I'm really looking forward to experiencing those upgrades and sharing all of that with you and telling you, hey, was it worth it? Was it worth it? Is it a dramatic difference? And why is it a dramatic difference? Look, the Seakeeper ride is already standard on so many boats, including every single Sea Hunter model. Every single Sea Hunter boat that goes out that factory floor has a Seakeeper ride system installed. If that's standard. That's standard. Just to ensure that your experience, that the owner's experience is as best as it could possibly be. If that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does. So I certainly don't want to be left behind. I don't want you to be left behind. So I'm going to share all of that with you, okay? In the coming days, looks like we're going to be getting the boat back early this upcoming week. We also had some engine maintenance done, swapped out a battery, so the entire time has not been a Seakeeper ride issue. We've just knocked out a few things at the same time. Maintenance is important, man. You got to do it. And I'm getting geared up for a very busy upcoming Wahoo season. So now's the time during kind of my slow hurricane season kind of period where taking a couple weeks to get caught up, you know, it's just the right thing to do. Our angling retreat, our fishing lodge, man, we are approaching completion. We finished a loft this week, and we're working on constructing a custom stairwell. This is a unique kind of scenario to get up to this loft area. So a few different people involved, and everybody's really, you know, doing their very best, and it's just going to be just really cool. Kind of be a centerpiece to this lodge. The Florida Keys Offshore Fishing Academy, of course, anglers, the full accommodations are provided right here at the lodge. So much cool stuff coming down the pipeline. We've got our Florida Keys Offshore Fishing Academy online video series is in the work as well. These are legit courses. This is not just a video seminar. This is a course broken down section by section and really taking different topics and techniques and species and breaking it down to depths that you just haven't experienced before. So I'm super stoked about the progress. And finally, I want to mention one more thing. We are just really probably days away from launching our store. We put together a small store with some swag, some shirts, hats, drinkware, just some fun stuff like that. So many people have fished with us and continue to fish with us and support Florida Sport Fishing TV, you know, want to show their support, enjoy the brand. So we've made it easy to order products. So that's going to be really cool. I'll share more of that with you. And in the meantime, look, my time is up. Get out there, spend the time getting ready for what's ahead of you. And today, get out there, open your eyes, look around, and make the most of every opportunity that comes your way. Go get hooked up. I'll see you out there.